All right, we are live. Hello, everybody watching out there. I'm John Graves. I want to welcome all of you to this month's ArtistWorks Live, where we're going to be talking with Andy Hall, our online School of Dobro teacher here at ArtistWorks. We're going to be taking questions from you, the audience, so please get those questions ready. If you'd please include your student name with your question, we'll qualify you for a special prize we'll be giving away at the end of the show today. So, okay, our guest today is the Dobro player of the infamous String Dusters. They recently finished a string of about 45 shows in about 3 months, so they were very busy at the beginning of this year. He has a duo record coming out this June with Roosevelt Collier. It's called Let the Steel Play. And he's been teaching here at ArtistWorks online since January of 2012, so more than 5 years now, if you can believe that, Andy. Welcome, Andy Hall.
Well, I'll play a little song here to get things kicked off.
Cool. Yes. Very cool. What can you tell us about that little jam?
Well, that's actually the first song on the duo record you were talking about that I did with Roosevelt Collier called Let the Steel Play. That was This Little Light of Mine. You know, song is pretty commonly known, but Roosevelt comes from this school of playing called Sacred Steel, which is like, you know, he grew up playing steel in church. And a lot of these gospel churches, instead of having like an organ be sort of the main featured instrument, for a lot of them it's lap steel or pedal steel in this kind of some of these churches. And so he grew up playing sort of the lead instrument in the gospel band in church. And so he was able to kind of show me and impart on me a lot of these sounds and stuff. So, you know, that was a song that I was certainly familiar with, but Roosevelt kind of gave it the full depth and the background of it for me. And yeah, that's one we do together on that record. So I just thought it'd be fun to show you guys. So, but great to see you guys, or at least know you're here, and happy to be here. So fire away.
Cool. All right. So let me quickly remind everyone that's watching today, the questions are mostly going to be coming from you, the audience. So although time will only permit me to get to a small amount of these, please start sending them in now, and we'll hit as many of these questions as possible. As I said, please include your student name if you would, and we can get you qualified for a nice little giveaway at the end of the hour. The questions are already pouring in, so I'm going to let those build up just a little bit more. Real quick, Andy, so I was lucky enough to catch the Dusters at the Fillmore in San Francisco, which is obviously a historic location. You guys did some Grateful Dead covers kind of in honor of the home that you were playing in. So just tell me a little bit about the tour, where you guys went, what you saw, just the experience as a whole.
Yeah, so we finally, after years of touring, have gotten with the program of being organized enough to like release a record and then do an album release tour. And so that's what this was. It was an album release tour for our record, Walls of Gravity, which pretty stoked about. And that record, was kind of a coming back to the Dusters' sort of original roots. The record before we did was a collaboration with a lot of female vocalists, so this was kind of like coming back to like our Duster roots, and there's kind of like a little more bluegrass on it. We just really tried to make a record that we enjoyed and liked to listen to, which is a cool way to do it. So yeah, so we hit the tour, we hit the road, did about 45 shows. I mean, we covered the whole country. A few festivals thrown in there, but mostly just club tours, getting to all these little towns, all these places. It's incredible to see just, the variety of people that get into sort of progressive, jammy bluegrass. I mean, it's everything from, traditional bluegrass fans to Grateful Dead fans to everything in between. It's just an interesting thing. And even though there have been bands that have come before us who've done the sort of bluegrass and a rock club thing, it's still fairly new. There's not a lot of bands doing it. And so it's fun to see sort of people react to bluegrass in a rock setting with jams and stuff, and some people are familiar with that sound from bands like Yonder Mountain or Leftover Salmon or String Cheese or Green Sky Bluegrass. Other people, it's a new sound for them. They hear about it through whatever means they've heard about it, and they might be their first show ever seeing a bluegrass concert. I hear a lot of that from people, and I love that. And I particularly love showing people the Dobro. I mean, there is not a day that goes by where somebody doesn't say, "Hey, what is that you're playing?" I don't even know what that's called. And so it's really fun to feel like I'm sort of an ambassador of the instrument, in the broader music world. And bluegrass, people know about it, but once you get out of this sort of traditional bluegrass world, a lot of people never seen it or don't really know about it, and it's fun for me to try and show them it. So.
Right, yeah, we see it, we're around it every day, so we just kind of, it's assumed knowledge, you just assume the rest of the world knows about it too, but it turns out it's not the case.
It's a little bit of a unique one, but with this school, the ArtistWorks school, it's like we're making a community where it's a home for people who play this sort of slightly unusual instrument, so it's a cool thing about it.
Well, so what I thought was really great is, living in California, Northern California, I mean, there's a lot of culture up here, obviously, but we don't get a lot of bluegrass or bluegrass-esque acts out this way. I don't know if there's just not a big market out here for it, or if they're just not as popular here as they are in other parts of the country. But to see you guys totally sell out the Fillmore and have that whole place just packed and moving, and they were grooving with you guys, so that was really cool.
It's exciting. I know. I'm amazed because, like you're saying, I mean, bluegrass, especially in certain areas, isn't this normal thing people go and see. There's not necessarily a lot of it around. So some of it, I do feel like we're kind of educating the people, and it can be a little bit of an acquired taste. I mean, there's banjo and dobro, and it's a lot of people didn't grow up listening to it, but once people's ears sort of adjust to the sound, just the energy and the vibe that goes on, people usually really latch onto. So sometimes there's a bit of a barrier to entry just because of the country twangy sound, but we're here to try and break down those barriers, hopefully.
Well, you're doing a great job at it. So was this one of the biggest tours, or at least the most dense you have done, as far as like a large amount of shows crammed into a tight period of time?
Yeah, it really was, and it surprised me because some of the string dusters are starting to have kids, and everyone's saying, well, maybe we should keep it a little lighter, and then next thing you know, here we go for 3 months, and everyone's having a blast. And so it's just this was one of our definitely our bigger tours and one of our more successful ones. It's always nice when you hit the road and you see it getting better as far as crowd numbers and things, and that's just it energizes us just because it's some sort of validation, like, okay, people kind of are resonating with what we're trying to do, pardon the pun. But it's like you do what you do, and you think it's cool and you think it's unique, but you never know how it's going to go. And so to see it go so well, and you know, like I say, the record too is something that we're pretty psyched about. So you know, yeah, it's great. And now we're kind of, that tour's over, and we're kind of switching into festival mode. So now it's like weekends of festivals and whatnot, which is also a great time of year for us. We love doing festivals. You know, the String Dusters all sort of met through the festival bluegrass picking scene, where, you know, you may play a show in the afternoon and then you go jam with your buddies at the campground at night. That's where a lot of us met, you know. So the festival scene has a sort of a lot of, you know, history and for us, and we enjoy it a lot. So.
Yeah, it's a great scene. Those bluegrass festivals are a lot of fun. Lots of jamming, lots of campfires, lots of.
Yeah, that's where I learned how to play. That's where I learned so many of the songs in like the bluegrass repertoires. Going to a campsite jam, and time flies. You're playing for hours. You don't even realize it. You know, you're hanging out. Some people come, some people go. The jam morphs. Different instruments come in. Different people bring different songs. And you're always hearing something new or learning a new tune, and then at the end of the week, you say, what was that? Oh, that was that tune. I've never heard that before. And then you research it and learn it and add to your repertoire. And you make friends, you meet new people that maybe you stay in touch with, and that's how the String Dusters form, you know?
Yeah. I remember going to IBMA in Nashville, and I checked in to my hotel, and they asked me if I was on a jamming or non-jamming floor. And I had never been asked that question before. Luckily, I was on a non-jamming floor because I needed to get some sleep. But when I went to those jamming floors, I mean, there isn't a single door that's shut. Every door is open, and you just walk down the hall and look in here, and there's a jam going on, and they welcome you in, and you can jam with them, and then leave and go to the next room. And it's a cool scene.
Yeah, it's awesome. For sure.
So, all right, we got these questions are just rolling in here, so let's get started. Let's see. Barefoot Kenny, our old friend Barefoot Kenny. Really glad to see you in the International Universe again. Could you explain how you use the 1, 3, or 5 of any chord to begin developing a lead in a song?
Sure. Yeah. Hey, Kenny. Good to hear you. Yeah. So he's asking, you know, if you're, say, in the key of G, how you basically use one of those chord tones to begin playing either a melody or maybe improvising or something. That's a really important thing. It's good. It's really important to know, really helpful to know what the 1, the 3, and the 5 notes are of a given chord. So if we're in G, the 1 is G, the 3 is B, and the 5 is D. And that's what number of the scale that note is. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the 1, the 3, and the 5 make up the sort of the chord. That's a G chord. So yeah, usually what I'll do is I want to be aware of which one of those notes the melody starts on. So say it's This Little Light of Mine, the song that I started off with. The melody starts on the 5. The first note that you play is a D. That's the 5. So I know that. So if I want to play the melody, I use that to help me get started with the melody. I just, this one little like road mark, you know, sort of landmark that I can use, the very first one, what the first note of the melody is. That's the 5 note in this case. So, okay, if I want to play the melody, then the 5 is a good place to start. If I want to improvise and play something different than the melody, I may choose one of the other 2 notes to do something that's different, you know. So just knowing what note the melody starts on, and in traditional bluegrass, it's going to usually be the 1, the 3, or the 5. I may pick a different note. So if I'm going to improvise, I may want to start on something different, you know. So I may go slide up to the 3 note and start there. All of a sudden, it's got a different sound than the melody. One thing I do, and I teach my students this, is a pretty cool way to sort of think about improvising. And a good way to get started with improvising is you can use the same rhythm of the melody, but start, say, on a different note. So if the melody starts on the 5, and the rhythm is da 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 da, I might play that same rhythm, but start, say, on the root. You know, it's like basically I'm playing almost a harmony to the melody, but that's a good way to sort of get you started with improvising. Pick a different note then the melody starts on, but use the kind of the same rhythmic idea, you know? You know, that kind of vibe. So that's usually how I think of, you know, one way you can use the knowledge of the 1, the 3, and the 5 notes in the chord, either to get you started on the melody or to choose a different note that the melody starts on and get you started with some improvising. It's a good jumping off point, you know. And then when the chord changes, you know, when it goes to the 4 chord, then the 1, the 3, and the 5 change. It becomes the 1, the 3, and the 5 of the C chord. And you can use any of those 3 notes to sort of play on when that chord is happening. So they're just sort of little landmarks that you can use as you go through chord changes. And that's a kind of a good exercise, you know. Figure out, say, the 3 chords that are in the song, if it's a 3-chord song. Figure out what the 1, the 3, and the 5 note of each of those 3 chords. A little exercise you can do. It might take you 5 minutes, but that's going to give you some deeper knowledge of the tune and where you can play.
Yeah, that's good. Sometimes all you need is just to get started, jumping off point, like you said. Once you're in the pool, you can swim, but you got to jump in first. And
that's it. It's a place to start, you know, and then from there, you know, you can add little landmarks. Where's the 1, the 3, and the 5 of the next chord that's coming up, you know, and that becomes a little research you can do on your own that can be real helpful to just get you familiar with the neck, familiar with how chords work, and yeah, good question, Kenny. Hope you're well.
That's good. Okay, so this is from Ron L. The question is there any way to get a pedal steel-like effect on a lap steel by using tone bar slants or slides into a chord position?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, there's a number of ways you can do that. I mean, the pedal steel, did it say how to get a pedal steel sound? Is that
yeah. So is there any way to get a pedal steel-like effect on a lap steel?
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, the most fundamental part of a pedal steel sound is obviously just sliding, but the real sort of unique thing about a pedal steel is one note changes while others stay the same. So, for instance, like, you know, I just pluck a G chord and most of the notes stay the same, but one changes. So that's sort of what I think of as the pedal steel sound. So, you know, one way you can do that is by using open strings, like I just did there. I'm playing a G chord and then fretting the 2nd fret of the 3rd string and then sliding up to the major 3rd. But, you know, so there's a few you can do in open strings, or maybe I would hit the open D note and then slide up to the major 3rd there. But with slants, definitely, you know, you can move slants where, yeah, one note is the same and one changes. Say I'm in the key, say I'm playing an A chord, 2nd fret A chord. This slant right here is a root the 3rd of an A chord. And then I can go from slant to a straight bar, and one note stays the same, the high A note. And the 3rd goes up to the 4th. So I may go, if I want to go from A to D, instead of doing this, I could do this. And that's what you're trying to get, is one note stay the same, one note moving. You know, you could also do where both notes are changing, but they might be changing at different intervals. So this slant is like a 1 fret slant. And then I go to like a 2 fret slant, 2 fret slant, 1 fret slant. And I have a lesson on slants in the curriculum that sort of goes through that. It gives you a little scale exercise, sort of like using slants. You know? So by practicing your slants, you know, and sliding them, it's delicate. It's a little tough to get in tune, even those weren't perfectly in tune, but it's something that you can practice, you know. So those are like forward slants. Then there's reverse slants where the bar goes the other way. So the idea is to be able to flow with the slants, you know, not just go and mute and play a slant and mute and play. You have to, if you can move the bar and let everything sustain, that's going to give you that flowy, sustaining pedal steel sound. Another great one is there's a 3-note slant, you know, that you can use, which is you're using the 1st, 3rd, and 5th strings. That one's good. One other quick thing I'll just show you that's pretty cool is if you tune the B string down to an A, you get this sort of 9 chord, but then you can use a bend behind the bar to get a real pedal steel sound. So, you know, you have to retune the instrument. So it's kind of, it would be like for a specific song maybe that you have a part worked out for. It's kind of hard to improvise in that tuning because it's, you know, different. But that's another cool way. So, yeah, that's, you know, that's a bunch of different techniques you can use to get.
That's great. That's great. He was asking about lap steel specifically, and you have a whole section on your site dedicated to lap steel, right? So
yeah, I've got a whole, you know, there's probably 15 lessons on lap steel. I could, you know, and you know, it doesn't matter what tuning you're in. I mean, the slants might be a little different, but you can use that slants on a lap steel just as well. I mean, the cool thing about lap steel is that it's got so much sustain that those slants will really ring out. Yeah, and so, you know, another thing you can do on lap steel, you know, you can tune it different ways. You can tune it to a 6 tuning, or, you know, like a C6 tuning, or things like that. But yeah, I mean, Dobro and lap steel, to me, the way I play them, they're kind of really interchangeable, you know. Yeah. So anything you can do on a Dobro, you can do on a lap steel, and vice versa, pretty much.
Those were really cool bends. Those behind the bar bends you were doing.
Yeah, you got to be a little careful with those. It's a little tough on the ring finger, so don't practice it too much. If you feel any discomfort, kind of, you know, give it a rest. But once in a while, and you can do it in regular G tuning. You can just you know, pull that 2nd string. That's usually where it's used, is the 2nd string. You know, it's just a little trick. You don't do it a ton, but it's something that can add a nice effect, and it's that effect of that's great on the lap steel, of just pulling one note, letting the others ring.
Yeah, that's cool. It sounded great. Okay, so let's see. This is from Peter Joseph Palmer. Says, "Hey Andy, I'm one of Michael Dave's students and thinking about starting Dobro. Anything unique to Dobro to take into consideration when approaching singing and playing simultaneously?"
Playing while playing Dobro, sure. I mean, that's something that I've sort of tried to work on throughout the years. You know, the biggest thing when you're switching from guitar to Dobro, the main thing is just the technique of like the bar and the picks. You know, the biggest thing I think is getting comfortable. Yeah, just, you know, putting picks on. You know, you've got the 2 metal picks and a plastic thumb and then the bar. So, you know, just getting comfortable with that takes just a minute. But you know, it's just a matter of sort of practicing and doing it. One of the challenges with playing and singing while on the Dobro is that, to me, Dobro is a real visual instrument. Like, you know, it really requires people to kind of be looking down at the neck. But, you know, when you sing, you obviously want to be singing kind of up and out. So a lot of it is sort of figuring out techniques that you can do, like rhythm chops and things that you can do without looking at the Dobro. And that would be, so getting your like rhythm chops really dialed in, where you can just kind of maybe just glance for a second down and change, you know. But getting to where this type of rhythmic thing, you know, the way you'd strum a guitar, this is like the Dobro version of that. Getting to where that's kind of second nature and practicing that like with a metronome is going to be key, because then you can just kind of do that and then sing, you know. There's a well-beaten path on some mountainside where I wandered when I was alive. and this movement of like my right hand is just kind of almost automatic. So practicing like rhythm chops and things. And then what I like to do is kind of do my own fill. So if I'm singing and then there's a break in the singing, then I can do a little slightly more complicated like melodic fill. You know, take my resting place upon the hill so high. Oh, I love those hills of old Virginia. From those blue ridge hills I did roam. And so just, you know, keeping the licks simple, real standard licks that you can kind of just do in your sleep automatically. You can do kind of in the spaces and kind of back yourself up in a way. But it takes some doing, you know, it takes getting, you know, I would play some dobro for a while first, you know, and kind of just start to get comfortable. But, you know, the sooner you want to start interweaving the singing and the playing the dobro, the better, you know, it just takes some time to get comfortable with the technique of dobro. And it requires, you know, dobro does require a little more visual, you know, looking down at the fretboard than I'd say guitar does, because, you know, with guitar, you've got this huge space to put your finger in between the frets and it's going to be in tune. But with dobro, any micro millimeter you move the slide, it's going to change the pitch. So it's got to be right on. So, you know, yeah, but I love that. I love to be able to back myself up, sing and play a song on the dobro. And so, yeah, getting your rhythm stuff just kind of really locked in. And, you know, in school, I've got a lot of lessons on like rhythm chopping and things. And so making sure you're practicing that backup stuff a lot will help with that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I never thought about how dobro does kind of get you to do this, and you really want to do this while you're singing. So that's a good tip. So just ways to kind of.
Yeah, and I'll let you in on a little secret. When I'm like, say, if I'm playing the string dusters, I'm singing a song. We don't have a mandolin, so I do a lot of the chopping. Sometimes I'll really mute all the strings and not even move the bar and just get a sort of non-tonal chop. Excuse me. So I might just, you know, using that same song, there's a well-beaten path on the soul mountainside where I was when I was a lad. You know, I'm not even changing the chords, but I'm just getting this sort of muted chunk, almost like a snare drum, that you can use as a backbeat, and then you don't even have to worry about moving the bar. And sometimes if I'm singing and really want to focus on singing, I'll just do that. You know, just get this muted chunk where there's not notes ringing, it's just a thwack. And then you can really focus on singing, but still get some like backbeat rhythm going.
Yeah, that's great. So our old friend Rick Spencer is asking about your dobro. He's saying, he said, "Cool looking dobro. What kind is that? It's beautiful."
Thanks. It's a beard, old mahogany. So it's got a couple cool, unique things to it. One of which you'll probably notice is this tailpiece, which is the hip shot tailpiece, which is awesome. I love this thing. So the first song I played was This Little Light of Mine in open D tuning. So you basically, with this hip shot, you can switch the tuning just by flipping this lever. So the two tunings I use most are D and G. So if I open it up, and I've got D tuning, which is real low, growly. It's also a wide tune. It's 2 full octaves from the low string to the high string. Good for like blues and stuff. And then I flip this, and I'm in regular bluegrass G tuning. So this is something you can add to any dobro, is this hip shot tuner, which is just super cool. You know, it takes a little getting used to. You have to use these fine tuners so that it's really in tune when you switch it. And when you put new strings on, it'll stretch the strings. So once your strings are settled, though, you set it up, and it'll just stay in tune, just D to G. It's pretty amazing. The other cool thing about this one is it's got a second cone in it. So there's the main cone that all dobros have right here. But then it's got this other cone set over here where usually luthiers will put baffles that help the sound sort of project out. So there's a cone sitting in there. You can kind of see that. Yeah. so there's two cones in it, and this cone resonates as you play. Like the sound is rolling around in the body of the guitar, and the cone is just this second sympathetic cone is like resonating, and it creates this slightly like more brightness, a little more sustain. You know, Paul Beard. You know, I'm not usually one for like gimmicks and things on instruments, but Paul Beard, he had me over to the shop, and he had a bunch of Dobros that had the full screens here. So it wasn't open. You couldn't see what was in here. There were like screens that covered it up. And he's like, try these. And I played this one. He's like, what do you think of that one? I said, it's got a really interesting, bright sustain that I just think is very unique. It's very noticeable. And he said, well, that one has something real special about it. He pulled the screens off, and I could see there was another cone in there. So we put that in the Dobro that I wanted, and so this is and he's making these. I think he calls it a bell beard, B-E-L-L-E, bell beard. I think that's what he's calling it. Second cone makes it a little brighter, a little more sustained. Aside from that, beards are just really good. So yeah, so that's this one. I like Mahogany. It's just a lot of Dobros are maple, and that gives them a nice sustain and brighter. But to me, Dobros are already pretty bright, and you play them with metal picks, and there's a lot of brightness going on. So for me, I like Mahogany. It's a little more sort of just middle of the road, kind of even sounding, and it sort of tempers some of the brightness. Of course, then sometimes I'm like, well, I wish I had a little more brightness. But you know, when we're musicians and players, we love all the instruments, and you know. But yeah, I love this thing. It's a good one.
That's pretty cool. Remind me what the name of that little tailpiece is.
Hip Shot. You know, and Hip Shot has been making this type of stuff for electric guitars for years. And they made one specifically for Dobro. So Hip Shot is the brand, and they make this. You can have any, you know, luthier attach it on there. And you know, I used to carry 2 Dobros on tour with me. Now I just do one. And
Wow.
And it's a way that you can really, you know, detuning is something a lot of people don't use because you have to retune the whole thing. But if you get this installed, then it just, in 1/2 a second, you're in detuning. You can experiment with that. So it's kind of cool.
Oh, that's great. So Robert Barty was actually asking what tuning you use. So it sounds like you use multiple tunings. Is there anything else, while we're on the topic, is there anything else you would want to say to everybody on the topic of tuning, alternate tunings, all that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the interesting thing about slide guitar, lap slide guitar, or really any slide guitar, there are a lot of people who use a lot of different tunings. I mean, you know, people who play bottleneck slide, a lot of them use standard guitar tuning, you know. Steel players, you know, like, it's like it depends, you know, if you're talking, say, 6-string, we'll just stick to 6-string slide guitar, so lap steel or pedal steel. There's a lot of different tunings that get used. For me and for people who play, like, say, bluegrass and maybe some blues, G and D are the 2 common ones. But you'll see people tuned to open A. You'll see people tuned to open E. You know, a lot of old country music, they would play lap steel in C6 tuning. So in a 6 tuning, you get a little bit more of like the sort of a Western swing sound. So there's a lot of different tunings. For me, just because my brain can only take so much input, I stick to pretty much G and D and may use other tunings just in a special occasion, maybe for a certain song, you know? One thing that you can do, but in a lot of ways, that's really cool. That's what's cool about it. It's really versatile that way. You can change tunings, experiment with different tunings. There's really no rules with that. And so it's fun to sort of experiment with that. It's probably good to focus on one tuning just to get familiar with it, familiar with the neck, you know. And for me, and for most people who play like bluegrass and dobro in general, it's G tuning, G, B, D, G, B, D. So if you were to like do a regular open G chord on your guitar, that's the tuning, that's the open tuning that most dobro players will use. But you can play in any key, you know, and that's, my school is all about that. You know, we use the open G tuning a lot, but I teach you how to play in any key. So there's really no limitation. It's just open G is sort of the, you know, where a lot of the kind of classic bluegrass dobro stuff comes from, you know. And bluegrass dobro gets a lot of its playing style from bluegrass banjo, which is also tuned to. So I think that's where that sort of came from. You know, Josh Graves, you know, he learned a lot from Earl Scruggs, and Josh is sort of the original bluegrass dobro player who really took it sort of to where you can play fast bluegrass, and he used G so he could play a lot of the same stuff that Earl Scruggs would play. So yeah, I recommend, you know, picking one tuning, kind of staying with it, having that be your thing, but then experimenting and branching out with other tunings if you like, just to get different sounds and different ideas.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah. All right, so H Train is asking about, he says, do you ever do physical warm-ups for your hands or fingers before playing?
You know, I've thought a lot about this. And so, yeah, I mean, one thing for me, when I put my picks on, good to see you, Hank. No, thanks for writing in. I use, like, you know, I tell my students I use like fiddle rosin. You know, I'll get an old piece of fiddle rosin, and it's not useful to the fiddle player, and break it up into a powder, and I put that on my fingers, and then I put my picks on. This is a great tip for banjo players or dobro players. Our banjo players started doing this too. And so you put the just powdered fiddle rosin a little bit on your fingers, then put the picks on, and after about 2 or 3 minutes, the picks have sort of got this tacky, they're just like locked onto your fingers. So that's one thing I do, sort of get ready to play, is I put my picks on like a few minutes before I actually want to start playing, and they kind of set on my finger, and they don't move, they're just like locked on them. But as far as like warm up, you know, what I've noticed is the most important thing is actually to be physically warm. You know, if you're in a cold room or you just come in from outside and it's cold and you start to play, I don't recommend that. I would recommend actually literally making sure that your body is warm enough, you know. So if I come in from the cold and I want to play, I'll run my hands under warm water and just kind of get them warm, because, you know, when people say warming up, that's what it means. It means literally physically warming up the hands so they're warm. And that is as important as any sort of exercise you can do, you know. It's just like a baseball pitcher. When he comes off between innings, he's got this huge coat on and he's keeping his arm warm. It's because he wants to stay warm. So the actual little physical warmth of the arm and the hand and the body is important. But then, yeah, I just start slow. I just really start slow. I don't do anything challenging for the first few minutes. And the longer it's been since you played, the longer, to me, it'll take to sort of get you warmed up. And warming up, it's not just physical, it's mental. You know, it's like blowing the cobwebs out, getting those synapses firing back the way they were when you were playing a bunch. You know, if it's been a couple of days, you know, it just takes a minute for your brain to sort of get accustomed to everything that's going on here once again. But I like to just start off with a song, you know. I'll just start off with something slow, like Maiden's Prayer. Just something not physically challenging. Just to get comfortable, you know. That one tune that you play that's slow will go a long ways towards warming you up. And then you can bump it up. After you play one song that's slow, then maybe after that, I might then do some like exercises, like some rolls, you know. But I like to start with a slow song. That's the first thing, you know. First is make sure the body's warm. Second is start with like just a slow song. Then maybe some rolls, and by then you're probably ready to do whatever you would like to do. So, but as I said before, one of the things that is probably most important is actually just physically being warm enough. I mean, you don't have to be like hot, you know, but just so that your hands aren't like ice cold, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a big part of it.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we actually have an important question from the ArtistWorks staff here. And it was about something that you had posted on Instagram a few weeks back.
My Instagram.
So what can you tell us about this hair here?
I told you, you're not supposed to look at my Instagram. Yeah, I mean, shoot, you know. I'm a hippie. I don't look like it, but I am a hippie officially. It's just, you know, I put on a nice front, but no, I mean, that's, yeah, I mean, you know, when I started playing music, it was, you know, I was, you know, just started like high school or whatever. And I just wanted to be a rock guitar player. And so, I mean, in the late 80s, early 90s, you didn't have short hair if you wanted to be a rock guitar player. That was just not part of the deal. You know, the bummer was I had this beard, but I couldn't grow a mustache. So I had like this Amish beard and like the long hair. It's just, you know, but I think I wore Birkenstocks and wool socks through 2 Boston winters all winter. I don't think I actually wore actual shoes for like several years. Barefoot Kenny will appreciate that. But yeah, you know, that's, you know, it's funny because I started off in rock and blues and, you know, Grateful Dead and Fish and bands like that. And then it wasn't until like I probably was like 19 that I actually started playing bluegrass. And it wasn't until my early 20s that I really got serious about learning like the fundamentals of bluegrass. And so, you know, I went to Nashville, cut my hair, started playing with country bands, you know, and really dove into that scene. But yeah, that's a good question. You know, it's my path to where I am now has been long and winding.
Well,
I wouldn't change it.
All jokes aside, you were rocking the drum set in that picture. So when you were first coming up as a musician, you said you started off on guitar. Did you play drums too, or were you just kind of messing around in that picture? Or?
No. My high school band practiced in my basement, and so the whole band was set up there.
Nice.
And so the drum stayed set up there for like 3 years, and it was this awesome like heavy metal drum kit, double bass, and toms everywhere. And I would go down there and just, you know, when you're like 16 or 17, you get a lot of energy, a lot of angst. And I would just go down there and just get after it on this awesome drum. You know, I had this great drum kit that was our drummers in my basement. So I would play on that for hours, you know. So I actually got to where I was like pretty decent on drums. And then when I was at Berkeley in college, I took hand drumming classes, Middle Eastern hand drumming from a guy named Jamie Haddad, who's played with Paul Simon and other people. So I was always into rhythm and drums and stuff like that. So that was actually my little brother's drum kit. And I think he got it for Christmas and I wouldn't let him play it.
Nice. Cool. All right. So we have a question here from I don't know how to say this student name. It's YGY14730. He's a Paul Gilbert student. He says, question for Andy, besides instrument tone and finger picks, how is playing a dobro technically different from steel slide guitar? By the way, beautiful instrument.
Thank you. Yeah, he's probably meaning maybe like electric, like pedal steel maybe. You know, that one of the interesting things about slide guitar is the nomenclature, just what you call things can mean so many different things. So if somebody says slide guitar or steel guitar, even steel guitar can mean almost anything you play on your lap with. You know, a lot of people call the bar here that I used to slide the steel. And so it sort of depends on what you mean, but pedal steel is usually what I think of when somebody says, you know, I play steel guitar. That's pedal steel, where it's like a whole console and you sit at it. It's 12 strings, you know, it's got a magnetic pickup. It's 12 strings and it has pedals that you use with your feet and your knees. So it's this table with 12 strings on it, and then there are these wires that go from this apparatus under the instrument to pedals on the floor and pedals at your knees. So you might be playing and you move a knee lever like this and it goes, you know, you got to use your knees and your feet. So it's really a complicated, sort of very unique thing to play. And you know, and it's difficult to play. I've owned them in the past, a pedal steel. It's an awesome sound. I mean, it's such a unique sound. I'm a huge fan, but it's like I can't sit down really and just rip on pedal steel. It's a different tuning. Like I said, it's 12 strings. So it's got this, you know, it's either usually E9 or a C6 tuning, totally different tuning, way more strings. They use a different bar. See, I use a bar that only the bottom is rounded, and it's got these nice divots for your fingers to hold. But a pedal steel bar is like a bullet. It's fully like a cylinder, round all the way around, really heavy, long, so that it can go across all 12 strings. And with Dobro, you do a lot of like hammer-ons and pull-offs. Where you hammer the bar down on the strings and pull off, and that's how we get a lot of speed and exciting playing. Pedal steel, they don't really do that. The whole idea with pedal steel is to use the pedals, the knee levers and the feet levers, to change the notes. And the bar a lot of times will be staying pretty still. In Dobro, we're really moving the bar a lot because we don't have pedals to change the notes. It's just all bar movement, you know. So we developed all these techniques by using the bar to get different notes, different sounds. But the right hand technique is pretty similar. You use 3 fingers and, you know, pluck the different strings, whatever you need, whether it be chords by like pinching 3 notes, or individual notes like that, you know. So, but the main difference is just more bar movement. Like the bar is just, you know, it has to move for the note to move. Whereas in pedal steel, you've got all these pedals at your disposal. But, you know, for me, it's like, that's, you know, I like just having one thing to focus on, the bar. You know, having like, to use both feet and both knees to change notes is just such a different world.
It's wild just to watch somebody play one of those things. It just almost seems unapproachable once you've seen it in action in front of you.
I'm a huge fan, can't play it.
Yeah, you're right though. What an incredible just sound and voice that they put off.
Yeah, well, you know, the neat thing about Dobro is, I mean, it was invented before there were electric instruments. So, I mean, this predates on any electric pedal steel or lap steel or anything. This was the first thing, you know. And the whole reason it has this cone apparatus was to make it louder before there was electric instruments, you know, before there were amps. You had this apparatus, and the reason it survived is because this apparatus gives it such a cool, unique tone. We got to where we could plug in our guitars and play loud, so it wasn't needed for that, but it retained its sort of value because it has a super unique sound, tons of sustain, you know, and is loud, which is kind of nice in the jam session.
Very cool. All right, so a nice little shout out here. Looks like the student's name is the Atlas Grove.
Cool.
Says, looking forward to seeing the String Dusters at the Grand Targhee Bluegrass Festival this summer. Can't wait to see you share the stage with Mandolin Orange, Traveling McCurry's, and Sierra Hull.
Yeah, Grand Targhee is a great one. We've been going there for years, and they have us back every year, which I love. You know, a lot of festivals don't necessarily have you back every year. That's one that we just keep going back to, and it's a smallish festival, but it just has a stellar lineup, and I think it stays small because it's just kind of remote. I mean, it's in the Grand Tetons of Wyoming, you know, near Yellowstone, so it's not, you know, it takes a little bit to get there, but once you're there, it is incredibly beautiful. You know, it's at Grand Targhee Ski Resort, so you can take the ski lift up and see the Tetons and everything, and
Wow.
disc golf, mountain biking, hiking, all this stuff. And then the shows are right at the base of the ski lift, you know, in this beautiful sort of grassy area. A lot of great bands. So yeah, looking forward to being there. It's a great festival, and kind of become one of our regular stops.
That sounds beautiful. How many people roughly attend every year? Do you know?
I don't know. I'm going to guess 3,000.
Yeah.
You know,
It's still a nice big crowd, but for a festival, that's relatively small, right?
Yeah. That's pretty common for like a bluegrass-y festival, I guess. But it's perfect. I mean, you know, there's plenty of people in front of the stage, but it's, you know, there's no lines or anything to do anything. It's just it's kind of an ideal festival experience. A lot of jamming too. Targhee also has a camp. They have a music camp associated with that, which I recommend. I taught it last year, and you know, I've taught it a few different years, so that you can do the Targhee camp, which goes, you know, Monday to Thursday, and then do the festival on the weekend. So a lot of these festivals have camps like that. So if you're into that kind of thing, you should investigate something like that. So it's a cool experience.
Cool. It looks like the Atlas Grove is the name of his band. His name's Danny Sadler.
Cool. I like it.
Looks like he's been there many times and says it's always a treat. So thanks, Danny, for participating.
Yeah.
And a nice little shout out for the Atlas Grove. Check out the Atlas Grove, everybody. All right, so another one from our good friend Barefoot Kenny here. He says, "You are a hippie. How well did that work out for you when you began playing with Earl? And how long did you play with his band? How old were you?"
Sure. Well, I mean, you know, a lot of people think of Earl Scruggs, you know, and Flat Scruggs is pretty straight-laced, but I mean, as some of us know, you know, in the 70s, he played with his sons in the Earl Scruggs Review, and that was psychedelic jam rock. I mean, it was, you know, full drums, electric guitars, and Earl Scruggs doing his thing, you know, with his all had long hair, you know. So, you know, he's no stranger to that vibe. But yeah, that was cool. I mean, getting to play with Earl Scruggs was definitely one of the coolest things, you know, I've ever gotten to do. You know, I was in Nashville kind of getting into the music scene and doing a lot of recording sessions. And Glenn Duncan, kind of a well-known fiddle player, and he was in Earl's band at the time, he said, you know, Earl needs a Dobro player for some shows. You know, I think you'd be great. Why don't you, you know, let's see if we can set up a little audition. So he calls me and says, yep, we're going to go to Earl's house and audition. And so we meet in like a Kmart parking lot, and then I follow him to Earl's house because Earl had this perfect Nashville Southern house, like big iron gates and all white and beautiful, like pull into the sort of carport. And I mean, it's just like amazing. And we pull in and Earl's on the porch waving. You know? And so we go up and park, and he greets us, and he's super nice, you know, and you go in, and it's just beautiful. Everything's like white and marble and classic, you know. And so we go into the living room, and it's just Earl and Louise, his wife, who's his business manager forever. And she was kind of really the one you had to impress. I mean, she was the sort of the boss, you know. I mean, Earl was, of course, the boss, but she was the sort of tougher nut to crack, you know, and she was the business manager, and she was known as being pretty, you know, strict, and you had to really have your stuff together. I mean, so, you know, so me and Glenn, the fiddle player, and Earl sit down, just the three of us, and start to play. And so, you know, I'm sitting here, I mean, this is Earl Scruggs, and he just plays Fireball Mail, you know, and then we're playing Fireball Mail. And then we play, you know, Foggy Mountain Rock. And then we play, you know, Rubens Train. And then we play this. And we're just jamming. And we're just playing, like, every classic Flat and Scruggs, like, instrumental that you can imagine. And Louise is sort of just there in the background. And Earl's having a good time. And I'm having a good time. And then Gary comes in, who's one of his sons. And he was, you know, I met him. And he was cool, and yeah, it just went well. But we probably sat and played for 2 hours. You know, once it was clear that I had sort of passed the audition, then we just kind of jammed.
Oh, cool.
Played tunes, and so yeah. Then I mean, it was just amazing. I was probably 27, maybe at that point, and yeah. And so then we just played some shows with him. Did a few different things. It wasn't a ton, you know. One of the coolest things about Earl, frankly, was going to his birthday party every year. Because after that, I was always invited to his birthday party. And he had this huge birthday party. Everyone who's anyone in Blue, you know, you'd sit and they'd have in the living room. They'd clear it all out, have this huge jam circle, and it'd be like Bale Fleck, Emmylou Harris, Ricky Skaggs, Travis Tritt. You know, Ronnie McCurry, just like Sam Bush, Jerry Douglas. I mean, you know, and that was like the jam, you know.
Wow.
And it was just like, and you just sit and pick all night. And so it was a cool experience. And, you know, Nashville, that was the cool thing about being in Nashville, was experiences like that you just couldn't get anywhere else.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. I had never heard you really talk much about that time in your life. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was, you know, nowadays I just play with the string dusters, who aren't even that famous, but just infamous. In Nashville, it's like, you know, there's a lot of that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
I prefer doing my own music.
All right, just a few minutes left, so we're getting into lightning round now. So we have tons of questions to get to still. We're not going to be able to get to them all, but let's see how many of these we can knock out. So it says, this one is from Donna Peterson. Hi, Donna. It says, hi, Andy. I'm Dee Dee in the mandolin school with Mike Marshall. Tell us about the balancing act of teaching at ArtistWorks and playing with your band.
Sure. Hey, thanks for the question. Good question. Yeah, you know, it took a little getting used to when I first started this. As John said at the beginning, I've been doing this for 5 years. So I've developed a good flow with it. But yeah, when we travel, like at the beginning of this year, we did 45 shows. I'm gone a lot. And so, but, you know, luckily there's some time during the day, you know, but not a lot. And so I really have to be organized and proactive and get enough sleep, because I can't just sleep all day or chill all day. I got to be on ArtistWorks and help out the students. So when I'm on the road, I use just my iPhone, and I have a little clip that I can clip onto anything. So I might be in a hotel room, I'll clip it to like a lamp stand or something, turn on the lamp, it provides a little light, and then just sit in a chair and do a lesson, you know? And so I'll have to go to the hotel to get a shower, clean up, or anything. I'll just budget an extra hour and bang out a lesson or two. And then just as we're rolling around, or if I have 15 minutes after sound check, I'll answer some questions on the site. And you know, it's just one of those things where you know, I don't like to put it off. I'm always trying to do a little something each day to just make sure I don't get behind, and make sure people are, you know, staying engaged, and I'm getting to everyone's questions. So yeah, like I said, it took a little while. At first it was a little overwhelming, but now I'm in a pretty good flow with it. I'm comfortable teaching, and it's just one of those things. But, you know, sometimes I do come home from tour. It's funny, you know, everyone else in the band, they get home from a 2-week tour, and the Monday they get home, they're just laying around. For me, I got to go to work. That Monday, I might have some videos backed up, and so the first day I get home is actually a heavy work day, and then the second day or the third day, once I get caught up, I can kind of relax. So, but I love it. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I love the other cool thing about it is when I tour around, I meet a lot of these students, because our band tours so much. Every show we go to, there's a student. I can't think of, there probably wasn't one show on this whole last tour I did where I didn't know that there was at least one student from the school there. And then so students get to see me actually do my thing live, and sometimes I get to meet him, or I'll just hear later they say, I love the show here or there. So the touring part of it is a little hectic, but I love it, and I get to actually meet in person some of the students. So that's great. I love it.
Yeah, that's great. I hear that a lot from a lot of our instructors, actually. Just every show they play, it doesn't matter what country they're in, what city they're in, at least one person will come up to them and say, hey, I'm one of your students on ArtistWorks. And, yeah.
I love that. I love that. I got to be on my good behavior.
All right, so another one from our old friend Rick Spencer, just talking about musicality. Basically, it says, I play all the same notes as you, but I don't sound the same. You know, maybe a quick 30 seconds on just, you know, going beyond just playing the notes.
Yeah, well, a lot of that to me has to do with being familiar with just the musical language. You know, what you're saying is the same thing as like saying, you know, I know the alphabet, but I can't write poems like Robert Frost. You know, it's just knowing what things flow together and work together. You know, like having a good foundation in like blues. Like to me, like blues music is one of the I've said this before. It's like an element on the periodic table of music. It's like it can't be broken down anymore. It's like the building block, fundamental of like whether you're talking about rock and roll, bluegrass, blues, jazz. Blues is like this fundamental sort of piece of Western musicality, and having just a good sense of how blues players use their notes, their phrases and things. That has been hugely, you know, important for me, you know. So if I'm in D, just knowing this, you know, just this blues type of stuff, a blues scale, you know. So that's big. I just honestly, it comes back to blues music. I think learn some of the phrases that blues musicians use that will translate to almost any other style of music that you use. So it's just a matter of like, I don't want to say like copying, but a lot of it is. I mean, you got to learn the language that's familiar, If you're just trying to invent your own language, that's probably not going to sound as good as if you take a language that's already established and begin to sort of use it yourself.
That's a good way. That's a really good way of putting it. That's interesting.
Yeah. So learn the language of the blues.
Very cool. Okay, so we got to wrap up. We're out of time. I wanted to say to you, and thank you so much for joining us. We have a lot of comments that I've been seeing during this conversation that weren't even necessarily questions. They were just thank yous and appreciation to you and what you do and your work ethic and the music that you create for all of us. So on behalf of everyone watching, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Had a great time.
And our winner today, we're going to give away a few free months. We're going to add 3 free months onto your onto your existing subscription. The winner today is Peter, aka Bluegrass.
Cool.
So, he was the Michael Davis student who was asking about learning how to play and sing on a dobro versus other instruments. So congratulations, Peter. We will reach out to you. And great. Thank you, everyone out there, for joining us, participating in this conversation. So many questions coming in, so it's a good sign that you guys are so enthusiastic to hear from Andy. And thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next month. Thanks again, Andy. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.